For our last video on precalculus, we're going to do a review by going through a series of questions and how you might approach solving them. So our first question here is an inequality, and we have the absolute signs. So one thing that makes this tricky is that we have absolute signs on both sides of the inequality already. And so one approach we can do is to graph these and then find where the one function is less than the other. So first, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to graph two things. I'm going to graph y is equal to x minus 3, and I'm going to graph y is equal to x minus 2 plus 0.5. Okay, so to graph it, let's go ahead and find some points that we need, that the graph will hit. So easiest would be perhaps the intersections. So firstly, the y-intersection. When x is 0, we see that y is 3. When y is 0, we see x is 3. So let's go ahead and sketch that out. So here's my graph. I'm going to find 3 and 3. And I'm going to go ahead, draw a line from 3 over here. So there's my first graph. And then for my second graph, again, let's go ahead and find the intersections. So we have, when x is 0, we see that y is 2.5. And we see that actually there is no point where this line will hit the x-axis, since the smallest value I can take is 0.5. So let's just find it over here. So when y is 0.5, we see that x is equal to 2. 2. Okay. So again, let's go ahead and graph this one out. So I'm going to go ahead, join these two, and then join that over here. Okay. And so over here now, I can go ahead, find this area, and I can see that my graph, my y is equal to x minus 3, is less than the other line when it is greater than this point. And I can see that at this point, x is equal to 2.25. So the solution for this inequality is x is greater than 2.25. Okay, so next equation, here we're going to handle some radicals. So here I see that there are two roots, and so to approach this, I'm going to need to get rid of these square roots. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to square both sides. So first step, let's square both sides. When I do that, I'm going to go ahead and get x minus 2 plus 2x minus 2 x plus 3 plus x plus 3 is equal to 25. Let's keep the radicals on one side and everything else on the other. So I'm going to keep the 2x minus 2 x plus 3 on this side, and on the other side I'm going to take my 25 minus 1 minus 2x. Let's go ahead and get rid of the 2, so let's divide by 2 on both sides. So again, I'm still going to keep the x minus 2 and the x plus 3. And on the other side, it'll just be 12 minus x. Okay, and now let's go ahead, get rid of the square roots again. So we're going to square both sides again. So in squaring both sides, I get x minus 2, x plus 3, no roots anymore. And then I'm going to just square this entire thing. So let's go ahead now and expand it. So we have x squared plus x minus 6 is equal to 144 minus 24x plus x squared. So let's go ahead and I can cancel out the x squareds, and I'll bring them on one side. I have 25x. On the other side, I gathered the numbers to be 150, which means x is simply 6. Our next question here, we need to find the inverse for this function. F of x is equal to x minus 5, x over x plus 2. So let's go ahead, let's write this out. Y is equal to x minus 5, x plus 2. I'm going to go ahead and get rid times both sides by x plus 2. So I have y, x plus 2 is equal to x minus 5. So remember, I'm trying to find x in terms of y. So I need to bring all the x's to one place so I can factor it out. So I'm going to go ahead, keep x, y on this side, and I'm going to bring x to this side also. While on the other side, I'm going to have the minus 5 and the minus 2y. I'm going to then, let's take out x from here. Y minus 1 is equal to minus 5 minus 2y. And then I can see that x is just equal to 5 plus 2y over 1 minus y. I got rid of the extra minus signs just so it looks a bit nicer. Okay, and then so now I just need to switch it back. So that means the inverse of this function is 5 plus 2x over 1 minus x. So next question. When a living organism dies, its carbon-14 decays. The half-life of carbon-14 is 5,730 years. If the skeleton of a human is discovered and has 20% of its original carbon-14 remaining, how long ago did the human die? Okay, so since we're dealing with half-lives, the rate is 0.5. And what we're doing is we're measuring how many half-lives have passed. So let's say n is the number of half-lives that has passed, and what we have is that we have 20% remaining. So 0.5 times however many half-lives have passed should be 0.2. So let's go ahead, and now since there's powers, I'm going to go ahead and find the logarithms of both sides. 0.5n is equal to the log of 0.2. By the laws of logarithms, I can take this n to the front over here, and I still have log 0.2 on this side. And that means n is equal to log of 0.2 over log of 0.5, okay? Which, after we calculate, is 2.3219. Okay? So this is how many half-lives. But remember, it takes 5,730 years per half-life. So I need to times that here. So I'm going to do 5,730 times by the number of half-lives, which is 2.3219. And through that, I see that it has taken 13,305 years to reach this level of decay. So the answer is this human died 13,305 years ago. Next question, we have a simple one here. We just need to convert this radians into degrees. So to do that, I'm going to take how many radians it is, and the conversion rate is just 180 over pi. So pi's will just cross out, and we see that this is simply 144 degrees. Done. Our next question, we have some trig going on here. So we're trying to find what are the x such that sine 2x is equal to minus cosine 2x for the interval minus pi to pi. Okay. So firstly here, I'm going to actually do some rearranging to make this a bit easier to handle. So firstly, I'm going to go ahead rearrange sine and cosine on the same side. Sine 2x over cosine 2x is equal to minus 1. And since we know sine over cosine is just tangent, I then have tan 2x is equal to minus 1. So now I need to find the values such that tan is equal to, the ratio that tan gives is equal to minus 1. So it's a negative number. And if we remember our quadrants, we know that the two places where tangent is negative is quadrant 2 or quadrant 4. Okay? So we can choose either one, and I'm just going to go for 2, and I need to create minus 1. So over here I have create the triangle with side minus 1 and 1, which is one of our special triangles, which we know is pi over 4, which means the angle, the overall angle that is being measured here is 3 pi over 4. So 3 pi, the tangent of 3 pi over 4 is minus 1, which means 2x is then just equal to 3 pi over 4. And since the period of tan is pi, I can then add any multiple of pi I want. So n here is just a real number, is an integer. Okay, and let's go ahead and get rid of that that 2. And so I have 3 pi over 8 plus n pi over 2. And so now I need to go ahead and find all the possibilities that are within the minus pi to pi interval. So firstly, I'm going to work on the positive numbers. So first, when n is equal to 0, I simply have the angle 3 pi over 8. And so now I'm going to go ahead add pi over 2 to that to get the next possible, which would be 7 pi over 8. Okay. And then if I were to continue going, the next number would be 11 pi over 8, but I see that already exceeds pi. So this isn't okay. So those are the two positives. Let's go ahead now to go to the negatives. So if I were to minus pi over 2, I would get minus pi over 8. If I continue going on, I have minus 5 pi over 8. And then minus 9 pi over 8. Again, here I see this exceeds minus pi, so this is not possible too. So then that means all the possible solutions are here. Okay. So I have four possible solutions on this interval such that sine 2x is equal to minus cosine 2x. Next, I'm going to need to find a specific angle from this triangle. We can immediately note that this is not a right triangle. And so that means I'll need to use either sine rule or cosine rule. I am not given any angles at the beginning, so I can't use sine rule, so I'll be using cosine rule to solve this triangle, or to find angle B. So I'm trying to find angle B here, so let's go ahead and use cosine rule. So I'll do cosine B is equal to the side squared, 6 squared, plus 9 squared, minus the opposite side squared, over 2 times the adjacent sides. Okay. And once I do that, I get the number minus 0.7315. And so from there, I see I just simply plug it into my calculator, and I get that B is equal to 137.01 degrees. Okay. And so that is that solved. And so those are review solutions for our pre-calculus.